St. Mungo is the patron saint of Glasgow, but let's be honest, this guy doesn't look like the saints we're used to seeing, right? Well, there's a curious story why. The artist chose to use an everyday man as his model to show how saintliness and kindness can be found in the most humble of characters. Both this St. Mungo and the real St. Mungo are depicted with a tiny little bird. Why? Well, to find out, we go to where St. Mungo started Glasgow back in the 6th century. This is Glasgow Cathedral, a medieval work of art dear to the heart of Glasgow. Worshippers have gathered within these walls for more than 800 years.
The very first stone building was dedicated in 1136 in the presence of David I. Incidentally, it may well have been a Christian site even before that, because we think that St. Ninian established his first cemetery here in 397. So the history of this site is amazing. But the very first church on this site was around 550 AD, and that was established by Mungo, also known as Kentigern.
So now we get to our buddy St. Mungo. He was a missionary in the 6th century, spreading Christianity throughout the Celtic kingdoms. It is believed that Mungo chose this spot for his church because it was close to an ancient waterway called the Melendiner Burn,
which was much more important at that time than the major river Clyde is today. That burn fed off 5 bread mills.
Wow.
And established where we are today. And Glasgow grew from this site to the High Street and then down to the River Clyde, and then it started to expand. So this was, at one time, Glasgow.
This was Glasgow.
The river was covered over in the 1870s, and Glasgow continues to spread and grow. But Glasgow Cathedral stays the same.
You're also standing in the oldest building in the city. There is nothing older than this anywhere in the city.
That is amazing.
Now, back to St. Mungo, whose name is actually St. Kentigern, which is Celtic for High Lord. So,
how did the name St. Mungo come from St. Kentigern?
Right. Well, as a child, he was christened Kentigern. He had a very poor start to life, but him and his mother were taken into a monastery in Curious in Fife, and he trained there as a monk. And it was St. Serf who called him Mungo, and the interpretation being, my dear friend.
And St. Mungo was known for being a dear friend to all of God's creatures, great and small, including a very special little birdie.
The bird comes in when Mungo was training at the monastery with St. Serf. The other boys were jealous of Mungo, and they suffocated the little robin. And when Mungo heard about it, he got hold of the little bird, blew into it, said a wee prayer, and the bird flew away. It came back to life.
And this story is so dear to the hearts of Glaswegians that, look closely, St. Mungo's bird is part of Glasgow's city coat of arms, along with the other symbols of St. Mungo's stories: the bell, the tree, and the fish. So, since this was his church, it is fitting that St. Mungo's final resting place is here as well. St. Mungo's tomb is in the lower level of the cathedral, which is a perfect spot to explore its curious architecture, because there are some divine mysteries to be solved here.
Modern day architects and engineers bring their recruits down here to see this, because it's so unique. Very few of the pillars are of the same circumference. They're all carrying different weights and different weight loads, and they do not understand today how they were able to work all that out in the early 1200s. They would find it great difficulty even to use a computer to get this. It's an amazing little architectural gem.
It certainly is.